Best Podcast Ever is sponsored by the Gertzberg Law Firm, a full-service business law firm in Cleveland and Chagrin Falls that's changing the way businesses retain their attorneys. Go to gertzberglaw.com to learn more. While you're there, check out Cover My Six, a complete legal audit of the 6 areas that most often create or prevent business lawsuits and government investigations. Go to covermysix.com to learn how we keep you safe. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to listen to the best podcast ever recorded.
I can almost remember the day when something just like flipped a switch in my mind and I started showing up and saying, look, I need to go out there and I need to be engaged. Every minute counts. Every day counts. Every face I see today counts. Engage with that person. And when I started showing up like that, life started showing up for me.
Hey folks, Alex Gertzberg here. Welcome to another exciting episode of Best Podcast Ever. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, okay? Melissa Hathaway, brilliant entrepreneur, hardworking, built her life around the idea of overcoming personal struggles, starting anew, and hope and positivity. And she has a great message to share in this interview. She is currently the co-founder of Cleveland Computer Recycling LLC. She's worn a lot of hats in her life, though, and she's going to talk about them here. We talk in this interview about some massive personal struggles that she overcame. We talk about inner monologues and creative outlets and meditation and swimming with horses and driving trucks to sell fresh pasta. I had a great time talking to her. I hope that you enjoy this interview. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. I hope you're all safe. I hope you're all healthy. And I hope that as we open ourselves up, our economy up, and our businesses up, that you can do so safely, and that this is not any more disruptive to you than it already has been, or that is absolutely necessary. That's my carpet cleaner downstairs, which is why it's noisy. I'm sorry about that. Here's Melissa Hathaway. Melissa Hathaway, how are you?
I am excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, sure, Alex. Thank you for asking me. It's a privilege. Thanks.
Yeah. So I've been trying to start these podcasts when I remember to start them this way. I'm glad that I remember, but I don't often remember to, but I am now. So here, one good recent personal win and one good recent business win.
Oh, well, I would think my best personal recent win would be maintaining a mindset when there's kind of a lot of chaos right now. And that I would say maybe even only a couple years ago would have been a challenge for me to not get kind of caught up in the collective with it.
I could see how that could be both a personal win and a business win.
Yes.
But you're making that your personal win. So what's your business win?
I think the most recent business win would be, I guess they are related.
Yeah.
I would say I was really proud of how I handled the recent challenge with what's going on in the world and being in a position of leading employees right now when we had to stay open because we're essential, and my employees were very uncomfortable with that. And there were times I just had to really step back and take my own personal feelings out of it and put on the leadership hat and almost parent them. And it felt good to step into that.
Awesome. So mine are that I did a really cool podcast and I was the guest on it this morning, and it was called The Daily Bread, and it was with my buddy JR, and he did it from Florida. He's got a company called the Podcast Factory, and it was like the most fun. I I forgot what it was like to be the guest on a podcast. But it came out fantastic. So that probably the business win. And then my personal win is I power washed my house this weekend. And I have been looking at these freaking green algae stains on the side of my house forever. And I've got this like, oh man, you can help me with this, Melissa. I have this muscle in my brain that makes me dread things that I once, just never really enjoyed doing, right? But now I enjoy the outdoors, and it was a nice weekend. But staring at these algae stains on my house for forever, and knowing that it was like going to be a half day easy project, I've just been dreading it, and out of sight, out of mind. But I did it, and it felt great. And now every time I look at my house, I love it more, That's my personal way.
It was like a purge.
Yeah. And it freed up all of this mental blockage, just like when you clear a project that you've been dreading forever, and it's just been taking up space in your mind.
Yeah.
And it's gone, and it just feels so much lighter, and that's an accomplishment,
I can relate to that.
Yeah. I have been dying to interview you.
Really?
Yeah, because you and I had a conversation 3 weeks ago, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
And we talked for a little while. Oh, it was because I was picking your brain about Mindvalley. I was thinking about I was looking into that, and you started telling me your story, and you started getting into this part of it that involved overcoming these. I can't remember if you used the word traumatizing or if I put it into my own mind from what I was hearing you say, but I remember saying, stop. I want to tell this story on my podcast, right?
Yeah.
And all that has really done for me is make me anticipate this story and hype it up in my mind. So for the last 3 weeks, I've been thinking about what this story what it could be and what it is, and I've got this insane imagination. So help me fill in all of those blanks that have existed for me over the last 3 weeks. Tell your story.
Well, I guess, I don't know. It just, I feel like the comeback kid or something. It is quite a dramatic story. I found myself in a position that I never, ever would have believed that I would ever been in, from my background, from the way I was raised. And I came back from it, and it was incredible. But basically where it started was 12 years ago, I left my son's father. Really dramatic situation. Not very, I guess it's humiliating as a woman to find yourself in a situation with a abusive man. He never hit me, but it was quite a lot of financial control and personal control, and a lot of issues that I never would have thought that I would have found myself in. My background was not like that. I come from a really great set of parents, really, wonderful people, no drama in the home, none at all. As a matter of fact, my parents were best friends for the whole 58 years they were married.
And how long and by the way, I am a chronic interrupter, so I apologize in advance. How long were you married?
To my son's father? It was 5 years by the time I left him.
Okay, got it.
So not a long time. Actually, I was married before that. I married my high school sweetheart, and we were married. We were together 21 years, and it was a very amicable split. We just had outgrown each other. When you get together at 16, it's difficult. You grow. So, and we had no children. And that's kind of why we went our separate ways, is that I ended up wanting children in my 30s, and he never thought he wanted children. But I probably jumped into this relationship a little too fast. I was used to being with somebody, and there were some red flags. I can look back now, and even at the time thought, I don't know. But I just kind of wanted to put my life together that way. So anyway, long story longer, as they say, it kind of just deteriorated after my son was born. I have a son who's high functioning on the autism spectrum. And the kind of person I am, I feel I'm very intuitive, and I felt like I was very connected to him and that I understood what he needed. And his dad and I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of that stuff. And I felt like, here's this kid who deserves every chance he can have to be understood and to be nurtured. He didn't ask to be here, and I was not going to back down on anything to do with him. And I felt like he deserved a good outcome. So I think a lot of our tensions were about that. But one day I found myself in the kitchen. He was just, I wouldn't even say he was yelling at me. He was just more like coming at me and just driving at me with these questions. And I kind of became this like a ball on the floor in a fetal position. And it's like my whole life flashed before me. I was like, who am I now? And how has my life come to this? It just was never anything that I saw for myself. Before him, I was very independent. I was driving a truck and a trailer all over the country, going to trade shows, and had a successful business. And I was really strong and independent. But after a couple years of something just kind of like water, like Chinese water dripping, water torture dripping on my brain, it had disintegrated, a part of my self-esteem and my self-knowledge to the point where I just could be backed into a corner like that. And that was it for me. From that day on, I think I packed a bag. I didn't walk out that day, but it wasn't too long after that I walked out with my son.
Being divorced myself, I consider my decision to get divorced to be one of the most courageous things I've ever done in my life. I never really appreciated how difficult a decision a person makes when they decide, because you have to overcome a lot of fear of the unknown over how that's going to affect you and how it's going to affect your children.
Yeah.
Right. I definitely never appreciated how courageous of a decision that is until I made it. Because you're diving into the abyss, you're walking away from this, although it's well, I guess it's also too, you get to a point, right, where it becomes untenable, right? There's just something that breaks, right? And it sounds like that's what happened to you. There was just a breaking point that you reached, right?
Yeah.
Was there something that, other than the specific circumstances of that particular fight, and was there something that you were thinking, something that you'd read? Was there a coach? Was there something external to yourself that you were thinking about when you decided this is when I'm making my move?
Well, I think for about a year prior to that, I had started to first I tried to seek counseling with him. And I was even seeing the counselor like one-on-one at times, and she was familiar with the situation. And I think for me, one of our sessions, when she looked at me and I told her some of the controlling things that were going on, and she just looked at me and said, well, have you ever read John Gray's book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? And I thought, what are you talking about? Yes, I've read that book, but this has nothing to do with what I'm saying. This man lets me have no money. He looks at my cell phone. He's checking the mileage on my car. We're not even on the same page, let alone in the same book. And that certainly is not what we're talking about here. And I think in that moment, when I didn't get any validation from a professional that what was going on was unhealthy for me as a person, and probably for my son too, that I think it shook me to say, listen, Melissa, your own voice is what matters.
Right.
If you feel in your heart of hearts that this isn't healthy, you don't need somebody else to tell you that. That was a huge turning point in my life, Alex, actually, because I think up until then, I had always been sort of this good girl, and, you kind of want to keep people on your side. And if somebody's a professional, then you probably need to listen to them. And I think that, I was 40 something when that happened, probably 43. I think all of a sudden I was just ready to hear my own voice.
Yeah.
The first time in my life.
So what happens next?
So we have this fight. I pack some bags. I start reading, probably was already kind of reading some stuff on abuse and what it looks like. And I made a safety plan and things like that. So I had packed a bag, and then one more incident happened maybe about 3 months later. And I let him get out of the car, and I just stayed in the car, and my son was already in the car seat in the back. And I just walked around to the driver's side, and I just pulled out of the driveway, and that was that. And I got on the phone, and I called the domestic violence shelter, and I said, I need a place to stay. So I drove to there. But I think, I had just been getting stronger and stronger over the months when I think, and like I said, that pivotal moment of saying, my voice matters. What I feel matters.
Yeah. Did you say you were driving trucks at this time?
Oh, well, we had a business together, and I think that's kind of what made it a little bit harder to leave, is that our whole life was wrapped up, and our finances and everything. Yeah. We were going around doing trade shows. We would travel, and actually that's how I met him. So before I knew him, I had a motorhome and a truck, and, you just go to places to, where the shows were and set up and sell.
So you go to a shelter with your son.
Yeah.
And how long do you live there?
I was there 2 weeks.
Okay. And then what happens next?
Well, I get some money together, and I was working. I was actually had kind of found a lead on a separate job in sales at the time. So I did have that to go to. And I scraped enough money. I think my parents gave me some money for the first month's rent and a security deposit on an apartment. And that was a hard one for me too. I had owned my own home. My first husband and I had bought a home when we were 19, right out of high school, and paid it off by the time we were 23. So to go to an apartment and not have a yard or a garden and it not be mine and have a landlord, all of that was really humbling, a real humbling space to be in. Yeah. And so we moved into our little apartment, and I have to tell you that 2 years that I spent in that apartment with my son, it's some of the happiest years of my life. I look back now, and I had dreaded that so much. And I think it kept me in the situation because I thought, this is what my life is going to look like. And I have a big, beautiful home. We had 17 cars. We had this business, a huge pool, a nice neighborhood. And I knew I was going to lose all that. And I literally did. He didn't pay me child support for 2 years. He threw away the house. He quit working his job and lost the house to foreclosure. Mm-hmm. And I just knew that when I left that I was going to be really starting over from scratch at about age 45. So
at what point do you become a business owner again?
Well, I worked at that job after I left him. I lost that job about 3 months later, which was kind of a blow too. But I just kept plugging, and the neat thing was that it was a Hartville flea market, which is a big, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's all kinds of vendors inside. And all these other business owners knew my work ethic. They saw me showing up every day and just giving 110% to the person I was working for. And the day that I lost my job, I literally had 5 other job offers within that marketplace. And the nice thing about it, it was a really workable, they were only open 3 days a week at that time. And I really still wanted to spend a lot of time with my son. He was only 5. So I ended up working there for about 2 years before I was back into something of my own. When I was working there, I met my current business partner who moved in and had a fresh pasta business. I soon began working for him and then became a partner.
I'm trying to deconstruct the last couple of years and get from there to, because you're obviously not a fresh pasta business owner today. You own a recycling company.
Yes.
So put those 2 timelines together for me.
Yeah, it's not easy. Well, Bruce and I continued to make pasta for a couple years, and also Bruce did have the recycling already kind of going on in the background. We lost the space that we were doing the pasta in, and then all of a sudden just it kind of happened overnight because the guy lost the building in foreclosure. And we just made kind of a really quick decision to just jump full time into the recycling together, and just me put my energies there as well. So I moved up here, and that's basically what we did. I mean, literally, I think we closed the pasta at the end of April in 2010. And I moved up here, and I think we got our first large space for the recycling, 10,000 square feet by October of that same year.
Yeah, well, I will tell you that from fresh pasta to computer recycling is a pretty drastic business change. It's cool. It's interesting that you had the same, part leadership team in both, right? So that's an interesting transition. And then our crack research department, Melissa, uncovered a question that I'm dying to ask you. How did swimming with horses teach you a valuable life lesson?
Well, it's an interesting story, and again, unusual, but you're probably going to try to knit this together too. That's such a strange.
I'm not good with segues, obviously. We're jumping around like crazy, so pretend like it has something to do with anything we've talked about so far.
Well, it actually does, because it taught me a lot. When I was in high school, I swear I've just chosen the strangest paths to go down. I don't regret any of it, but really just such an eclectic learner and such an eclectic person. But when I was in high school, I chose to, for my last 2 years, to go to vocational school. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, I had no background in the what I chose to do. I wanted to go into agriculture. I'm a city girl. I grew up in the suburbs, but I did have a love of horses, and I thought, this is what I think I want to do. I think I want to maybe be a farm manager on a horse farm. And I think another good skill to have for that would be going to farrier school, which is farrier is a person that shoes horses. Mm. So when you're in school, you have to learn to shoe horses. You actually have to go out there and do that at some point on live horses. Mm-hmm. And so in the middle of the summer, that summer that I was learning to shoe, my school had contracted with broodmare farms down in southern Ohio, down in the Wilmington area, to go down and practice on the broodmares. So we'd get in the van and we would drive down to these broodmare farms, and there were 6 of us in my class. We'd drive out as far as you could. These farms were immense, like thousands of acres. And you'd drive out in the van as far as you could, and then have to walk the rest of the way with your tools. And out to where the horses were and catch them to work on them. So, we'd go out there and grab the horses, do our work. Well, one day, this is mid-July, thunderstorm comes up out of nowhere. Not a great place to be out in open fields in a thunderstorm. But, we just tried to get back to the van as soon as we could in the storm. Well, in the interim, what was a mild creek or brook that we had crossed on foot, we get back to it, flash flood. This thing is a raging torrent by this time. Wow. And you got to remember, we're talking 1978, pre-cell phones. The van's on the other side of the creek, starting to lose light. It's becoming dusk really quickly, and it's like, okay, how are we going to get across this creek? Well, we had to improvise really quickly, and one of us, I'm not sure who it was at the time, thought, maybe we should just catch a couple horses and kind of swim across the creek. So quickly, everybody tries to grab a horse, and we grab our lead ropes that we had, to hold them, and reins were improvised, and people were jumping up on stumps, fence posts, whatever it took to get up on the backs of these brood mares and hope that they were going to cooperate, because many of these horses were, like I said, standardbreds. They're not saddle horses. Yeah. So, you just tried to catch the tamest, most docile one you could. So, go ahead.
How many did you get across?
All 6 of us got across.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah. How old were you? 16. Jeez. It must have been pretty scary.
It actually was. When I look back on it, I think, while it was kind of fun, and I felt like, like the problem solving in the moment was kind of like, hey, let's do this. It's fun. There could have been ugly consequences.
Yeah.
And could have been a story that somebody was reading about the next day in the paper.
Yeah. Another question from our crack research department came back about the power of being the underdog. What does that mean to you?
I think there's a lot of power to being the underdog. And I think being the underdog is very underestimated. I think that I've been an underdog my whole life. I never quite fit in at school. I always seem to find a way to do things differently. And sometimes doing things differently puts you on the outside of the crowd.
Yeah.
And while that can make you feel different and undervalued and perhaps like you don't have something to offer, many times it gives you the freedom to see things in just a little bit different way. It can put you outside of the box, and you can kind of tend to come at things with a fresh perspective.
So when you think of yourself as an underdog, do you find that to be more an internal narrative that you tell yourself, or do you have, objective evidence of being the underdog? And here's what I mean by that, before you answer. I realized at some point in the last couple of years that I've spent most of my life with horrible imposter syndrome, right? Where I just have been, my internal monologue was always something like, they're going to find out that you're a total fraud, right? And what that taught me was to power through despite the negative self-talk, and eventually turn that into positive self-talk, which came very late for me and very late in my life. And we're going to get to that, right? Because I've got questions about that for you. But specific to how you think of the word underdog, do you think of that the way I think of it, as almost like imposter syndrome, or do you believe that you truly have been the underdog outside of just the way you thought of yourself?
That is beautifully put. That's a really good question, because I can see a couple facets of that. I too have that imposter syndrome. where I think, who am I to be on this podcast today? What do I have to say that anyone's going to hear or want to hear or find benefit, add value? But I do believe that the underdog thing is perhaps a little separate from that, in that I do think there are times I have actually been the underdog. I feel like I had a learning disability in school. I don't feel like I blossomed until I went to trade school, where it was a lot about being I think I'm a kinesthetic learner, where I have to actually do things. For me to sit in a classroom all day was the worst thing for me. I was like an average C/D student when I was in regular high school. When I went to trade school, I was winning contests. I became the school farm manager. I just absolutely bloomed in that kind of setting. But up until then, I really did feel like someone who kind of had some cards stacked against me.
Yeah. Let's circle back to the self-talk, right? So, because I did notice something in our research department's bio of you that really struck me, and it was the Robbins. Is it Madonnas?
Yeah.
Robin, what is it? Madonnas, right? So that's Tony Robbins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to hear about that experience, but I want to talk about Tony Robbins specifically, because a minute ago when I was saying how I learned how to turn my negative self-talk, my negative inner monologue into a positive, I can draw a straight line from the moment that I read Awaken the Giant Within, and then Ultimate Power, and and then after that I was off to every other book that he wrote. When I realized that that's a choice, that the voices that you listen to in your mind, they're going to keep chattering. You can't stop them from chattering, but you can decide which ones you listen to, which ones you attach to. And in fact, when you start really paying attention, you actually have the ability to change the voices. The negative ones will be there, but you can actually create louder, positive ones, right? And so talk about what your experience with Tony Robbins and with that negative self-talk stuff is from your own personal experience.
Wow. My own personal experience with Tony Robbins goes way back. I think I've been a fan since sometime in my 20s. He's had a huge impact on my life. And there were many, many times when I was in bad space that I would think of something that I would have learned from Tony Robbins. And a lot of it, would be like, just change your state. If I have to jump around to physically change my physiology, that it could overcome a lot of mental negativity. However, as long as I've been exposed to Tony Robbins, I don't think that I really made use of a lot of the stuff until right after I found myself in such a bad space in my living situation and my working situation when I left my son's dad. And that's when that all really started to kick in for me, because I think that I was at rock bottom. And I was open to really saying, look, you wouldn't be in this situation if something, you didn't have something kind of, you chose something about it. I mean, that doesn't, I'm not saying blame the victim, because that's bad. But obviously, I think at some point you do have to take responsibility for your own narrative. Yeah. And what that's bringing to pass in your life. And that's exactly what it was for me. I needed to change my narrative. And that, like you, Alex, was a lot about self-talk. And I can almost remember the day when something just flipped a switch in my mind, and I started showing up and saying, look, I need to go out there and I need to be engaged. Every minute counts. Every day counts. Every face I see today counts. Engage with that person. And when I started showing up like that, life started showing up for me. And stuff just started to happen, and I can't explain it, and I wish I knew, but it is the secret sauce. I swear it is.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Melissa, everything you just said resonates with me so personally, because there's, I mean, for me, what it was just the acknowledgement that I have the power. I have the ability to decide what I see, what I think, and where we are constantly exposed to all these different stimuli and facts and whatever, and you can decide which ones are going to be negative and which ones are going to be positive, and you can decide that none of them are negative at all. Right? But it's the decision. It's the idea that you actually have choice in how you perceive the world. That to me was the switch. The real challenge is remembering that, it's the emotional memory, right? And actually I think it was in something that Tony wrote, but you see it again and again in like all these positive psychology books, and the idea that when you get into a negative emotional state, everything you see is going to be negative. Suddenly, everything you remember about that person, you're only remembering the negative things, or about that situation. Suddenly, you're always in the same negative place. And you don't see any of the positive things. So getting out of that negative state and putting yourself into a positive one, asking yourself questions about like, what am I grateful for? What am I proud of? Where is there love in my life? That puts you into this positive state. And suddenly you're not seeing all those negative things anymore. Right? But it's remembering. I mean, this is the challenge. This has always been the challenge for me. It's remembering to do that when all you see is negativity.
Right.
Because, you know what I mean? So tell me how you do that. How do you remember to get into that? You have the power to get into that positive state, and that you reach into your toolbox of, gratitude and positive questions, everything else you do. How do you remember? What triggers it for you?
When I first started seeing this really pay off in my life and start to work for me is the moment I knew that I would have to train for that mindset like I was training for the Olympics, and take it that seriously. Because I started to see it as almost a matter of life and death. And, whether it's a matter of physical life and death or just spiritual life and death, it's kind of the same thing. So I just started making that, I don't know, it's just like the citadel, of my mind, and I guard it. I am careful about what I watch. I'm careful about what I listen to. I'm careful about who is in my life. Yeah. They say you rise to the level of your 5 closest people. Yeah. And so I like to take that under advisement and really look at that every once in a while. It's not that I'm not going to have anything to do with people, but as far as my inner circle, they have got to be on the same track, and they've got to be positive, right, and people who want to move the needle of their life. And so I'm very careful about that. But I do have like a morning ritual that I think really kind of sets the tone for my day. And I if I have to get up earlier to get it in, I get it in, because to me it's just crucial. It's like breathing air to me.
Well, so you're anticipating one of my lightning round questions coming up. What is your morning ritual?
Well, my morning ritual is that when I first get up, I do some energy work. And now some of these things have changed over time for me, but this is kind of like one of my latest additions, and it has to do with something that kind of happened to me this winter, where I kind of got off balance in my life. And I just started adding some energy work to my ritual, but it's the first thing I do when I get out of bed, because what had happened is that One night I got up in the middle of the night and had vertigo so bad I couldn't stand up, ended up having to go to the ER. It put me on the floor, and it kind of changed my life because it made me realize, and isn't this interesting, my body told me my life was out of balance. And I really was. I was still dealing with some negative chatter, and that negative chatter had to do with perfectionism and how the mean girl inside myself was still kind of, going at me. And I kind of came out of that situation going, this has got to stop. And I feel like it's changed my life because it kind of flipped a switch within me that turned on like a happiness gene. It's like, okay, if you can't get off this floor and you end up in the hospital, you've got a son with special needs, you've got a business to run, what really matters here? Right. And I started realizing that I needed to apprehend something in my life that I still really hadn't apprehended, and that was a little bit more peace. And that peace was not picking on myself so much and needing to be perfect. So the energy work that I learned really started helping me physically kind of ground myself and just balance like the energies in my body. So I kind of do that right before I get out of bed. And it makes me feel so good. And then I do a tapping meditation. I'm really into meditation, but when I found the EFT tapping, I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah. I really love it because it's so active, and I am too. So for me to be a person who meditates in silence with my eyes closed, very hard for me. I'm very kinesthetic, love to move, got tons of physical energy. I love the EFT where I'm actually saying something out loud, and I can tailor that every day to something I'm particularly going to deal with that day. So like if I'm going to need some self-confidence, I can make it about that. If I'm going to need to, maybe kind of step into really strong leadership because I'm seeing a problem at work, I can tailor it to that.
I'm definitely going to try that. You and I talked about Mindvalley, and they've got like that 6-part meditation. Were you doing that for a while?
Yeah, I do that one too. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I like how in there he has many phases of that. A big one's forgiveness, which I think is really key if you want to see your life spring forward, is to really deal with forgiveness and, not just mask that over with something else with achievement, but like really truly get down to that.
Yeah, and so folks listening or watching, if you go to Mindvalley, there's a 6-part meditation, and it takes 20 minutes, and it's a guided process. And do you remember what the 6 parts are, Melissa?
I know forgiveness, seeing someone you love, and then spreading that love out to the world. I like that. I like that picture. And visualizing your day, visualizing what you want in your life.
Is gratitude one of them?
Yeah.
Gratitude is one. Yeah, we're not doing it justice here, but it's powerful. I do straight just mindfulness meditations, insight meditation, vipassana, and I've been doing it for years, and that probably is one of the biggest game changers for my personal well-being that I've ever had. That helps me. Meditating and doing it on a regular basis, more than anything else, allows me to see what my mind is doing without my control, and that is really important for me because of that, imposter syndrome that I had for so many years, because there's still negativity there, but knowing that I don't have to follow it and associate with it, and that I can just watch it happen without actually, making it me, meditation helps me with that a lot. Did we do your entire morning routine? Have we got?
Oh, then I like to read a little bit. I like to read biographies, and then I also journal. So I try to do a process from The Artist's Way, which is a book I found really positive in my life, morning pages. So I try to rate 3 pages of just like, top of the mind, just whatever.
Yeah, Julia Cameron. That's an amazing book. She calls she calls them spiritual windshield wipers.
Yeah.
I love it. Just emptying your mind for 3 pages. I was doing that for a really long time, and then I decided that three pages is a lot for me. So I just go until I'm empty, until I'm done.
Yeah, I hear you.
But that's a powerful thing to do, especially for people who are trying to be creative. It's like part of the idea, I think, is to get to the other side of that, right? Do you are you a creative person too, Melissa? Do you do any kind of business is business. There's a lot of creativity to that, right? But anything outside of business that you would consider creative?
I'm a huge. I love gardening and landscaping. The first business I owned, actually, I had a landscaping company for about 20 years. So that was a lot of fun. I find that to be creative. I love photography. I'm still an emulsion person. I really love. I had a dark room at one time. I'm learning the joys of digital, but I used to love to get in the dark room and really manipulate things. My latest endeavor with photography is a really cool process where you take Polaroids and transfer the emulsion onto watercolor paper, and it comes out, a photograph looks almost like it was painted instead of a photograph.
Do you make these works available for other people to see? Are they posted anywhere? Are they?
No, I haven't really crossed it over into that yet. Although I am a part of a group, an Artist Way group. There is a local girl here that teaches Artist Way.
Really?
Her name is Jen Jones Donatelli up here in Cleveland. And she's the editor of, she used to be the editor of Freshwater, and she just changed to another publication. I wish I remembered. So I'd love to give her a shout out if anybody would ever want to look into that Artist Way class. She does an awesome job. We are talking about having a reunion with all the people that have gone through the classes and having like a little show.
I might have to check. So first of all, there will be if there's a link to her organization, it will be in this podcast. It'll probably be down here somewhere, and in the show notes. I should check that out. I've been chipping away at a book for like ever. That's how I got to reading The Artist's Way, actually. I'm hundreds of pages in, and there is no end in sight. And one of these days, I'm going to finish this thing. Okay, I can keep asking you questions forever in an unstructured way, but I am going to start firing them at you in the lightning round.
Okay.
Are you ready for the lightning round?
I'm trying to be ready.
Okay.
We're
only a few Zoom meeting podcasts into this podcasting experience. I think there's like 120 some episodes, but you're only like the 5th video. So I say that because this is where it would be cool to have like a lightning visual coming down when the lightning round starts. John, I'm talking to you. You should make it. All right. You ready for the lightning round?
Ready.
Here we go. What is the non-religious book or author whose words you apply the most in your life on a day-to-day basis?
I think it'd be Tony Robbins. And I can't say which book or where I saw this from him, but it's, I've been saying this one a lot to myself lately. Winter isn't forever. Winter is always followed by spring. And it's all about how you take advantage of the season that you're in.
Yeah. Is that a Tony Robbins quote?
Yep.
I love it. If you were a professional boxer, what song would be playing as you entered the ring?
Busta Rhymes. We made it.
Is that right? Busta Rhymes? I wouldn't picture you as a Busta Rhymes guy. That's fascinating. If you could ask one question of anyone who ever lived, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Amelia Earhart. What happened to you, girl? I want to know.
I got a theory about her. I don't think she disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle at all. I think she went off to live as just a farm girl somewhere in the world, as they all speculated. Like I just did. That's rank speculation.
I like that. I like that though.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by the idea of people faking their own death in general. I just think
yeah.
Just leave the world wondering. Okay, so other than the one that you've already described, describe a time when you had a massive personal challenge and how you bounced back from it. Personal or business?
Okay, this was a massive challenge. My partner and I had made a decision to up-level our business about 5 years ago, and we were going to try to go to the next tier in recycling, and that would be not selling our material outright to a processor. We would have it refined ourselves. Well, we chose a company. The first 3 rounds worked out. The numbers came back. We were happy with returns, the results. The third time, they claimed that the crucible broke and spilled our gold all over the floor, and we lost about $150,000 of real money. This was our money, and it really took the wind out of our sails, and we didn't really know how to proceed at the time. So we went back to doing it the way we were doing it. However, it took us about 4 years to, I would say, get the courage to try it again. And it would be very easy to look back on that time and say, wow, we lost a lot of momentum. We should have kept going, just chose another company to move forward with. I chose not to see it that way. And it was a really big challenge to trust again and say, okay, we're going to give it another shot, because by the time the smoke and dust settled, how can you put it was more than $150,000 we lost because we lost momentum. So I guess, just overcame it by saying, look, you got to go all in sometimes. You're never going to get to the next tier without just taking a risk and just doing it and saying, let's go for it. And we did. And it's working for us now.
Yeah. I love stories like that because, so I have lost exactly one trial, and I relive that trial in my head all the time, still, even now. And getting back into the courtroom for me was like the hardest thing after that, and I get it. I mean, when you have such a colossal business loss that goes to your core, getting back on that horse, is like so hard. It's so hard to get, you put yourself back into that memory, and you got to overcome that fear, and it's tough. I love stories of the comeback kid like that because it's encouraging. What is the metric you use at the end of the day to decide whether it was a good day?
I love this one because it's really simple. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe it's too simple, but I lay in bed at night, and if I feel peaceful, it's good. It's all good. Just to lay there in my bed and be thankful for it and know that my son's healthy and happy and is doing great, by the way. I feel like I've had a successful day. If I've lost money, I've lost money. If I've, had a falling out with somebody, it's like tomorrow's a new day. Let's just try to make it all right. But if I have peace, I know it's been a good day. And
do you have bad days using that metric? The reason I ask is it seems like you've got your stuff together. Talking to you, it seems like you kind of know how to put yourself into a peaceful state, right?
Yeah. I guess what it seemed like, too erudite to say, yeah, that's how I feel most all of the time. Yeah. I don't know if it's because I've been through some really hard stuff that it's like, at one time I didn't know that I would ever, be where I am. I mean, I'm so grateful. I'm just really grateful.
Yeah. And that's, you know what? And that is the antidote every time. Right.
Right.
I mean, I've felt for a long time that it is impossible to be both grateful and bitter, or both grateful and unstable, grateful and choose your negative state. If you are truly grateful, that takes everything else off the table.
You're right.
Yeah. I remember this. I mean, and this goes back to the irony of the lightning round is that there's nothing fast about it. And I remember when I was in Iraq in 2003 with the Army. I was in an Army Reserve unit, and we got called up, and we went to Iraq. And I came back after a year, and I remember when I came back saying to myself, I will never have a bad day again, because of how I saw people living over there and dying over there. And I made this decision to come back and always be grateful for living in America, or for just not living in that way, right? Boy, it didn't take like a week, right, before I was like complaining about something stupid, So all which is to say that if you can, when I remember that commitment that I made to never have a bad day again, to be grateful for what I've got here, when I remember, it works. It works like a charm. But it's just so easy to not remember, and so practicing helps. Yeah. I love your morning routine. It helps to remind yourself on a regular basis that you've got it pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm rambling. Okay.
No.
What is the extension to that question is, what is the metric that you will use at the end of your life to determine whether you've lived a good life, a life well lived?
I thought about that, and I just thought, I think it's the addition of day upon day. I mean, this is it, this is life. Every day is kind of its own little microcosm of your life. So you just add day after day after day of that kind of thing. I hope that's how I feel at the end of my life. I think the biggest thing I could say is that, if I want to go for something, I want to go for it. And that's the biggest thing. I don't want to come to the end of my life and say, that my regrets are that I didn't take that risk or try. That's probably my mantra is, just go for it and try.
What's an assumption that you had for a long time that you later found to be totally bullshit?
That other people have it all together. And that somehow when they were all standing in line to get the secret, that somehow I was in the wrong line.
Yeah.
I thought that for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a Tim Ferriss quote, which I don't think he made up, but it's every one of your heroes is fighting a battle you know nothing about, right? It's so true. It's so true, right? I think there's an exception to that, though. I think that the ones that actually do have it together, and it's rare and it's unusual, are the ones that realize it's kind of Buddhist that suffering comes from attachment, and that you can choose to detach yourself from everything, right? Like, you can be truly present, truly in this moment right here, and pretend for just a second that there's nothing else in your life, no material possessions, no, your job is gone, your People you love are gone. Everything is gone. And you are totally, totally okay with just what you've got in your world right here. You're completely detached. That to me is, that creates, I think, a serenity, a peace that eliminates suffering or reduces it. But I don't know a lot of people who can do that very well, and I don't know anybody who can do that consistently. So I think it is true. Everyone is fighting some battle. It's just always, in my mind, in my view, a battle that relates to something that they're attached to. A result, a person, a thing, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Now for this is the daddy. This is the most complex. Some would argue the most stressful of the lightning round questions. So brace yourself, Melissa. I call this the Widowmaker. What is an embarrassing thing about yourself that only a few people know? For extra credit, for bonus points that no one knows.
That no one else knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think too many people know this about me, but if I had my druthers, I could just stand in the kitchen, take a stick of butter, put it in a hot skillet, melt the end of it, and then lick it until I've probably eaten 2 tablespoons of butter that way.
You're saying that you just really, really like eating butter?
I do. It's embarrassing and it's awful. And the worst part of that is that I'm vegan. I don't really do it often, but boy, and let me tell you, if it's like that Amish butter or from, like that Amish roll butter is so good. Yeah, it's done.
I'm a 44-year-old adult male, and I've never heard of that being a thing in my entire life. I didn't know that people did that. That's fascinating.
I don't think people do, but I do.
You do that. Wow. You really like butter, huh?
I like it.
Can you, they've got vegan butter, right?
I guess. I don't know.
I'm sure that they do. I've passed it up, but I couldn't imagine just taking a hunk out of it. And I'm not judging you, Melissa. I think, listen, if you love butter, you should eat butter. That's a first. That is a best podcast ever first right there, Melissa. Thank you. Is there any question that you wish that I would have asked you, or that you would want me to ask you, or that would elicit an answer that you would want the universe to know?
Oh boy, I can't really think of anything. This has been so much fun. I can't really think of anything.
Well, I knew that this was going to be an awesome interview, and it was. I'm so grateful to you for letting me crawl into your head and ask you questions for the last hour. I thank you so much, Melissa. This was fun. I learned a lot about you. I learned some tips. I will be looking into EFT tapping meditation for sure. That sounds fascinating. And thank you. And send us to your business. So it is Cleveland Computer Recycling.
Yes.
Right. And I did not do a good job looking for it. Where's the website?
I think our website's down right now. We just changed SEOs, so I think we're in a lag time of getting a new one built. But yeah.
Okay, that's okay. I think that you have a Facebook page called From Burnout to Breakthrough.
Yes.
And you have an Instagram page, melissa.hathaway3.
Yes.
So folks can find you there. I thank you, Melissa. This was awesome. This was fantastic. And folks, thank you all for staying with us as long as you did. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Melissa.
Oh, thank you, Alex. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we thank you for listening. And remember to check out the Gertzberg Law Firm. Whether you are starting, running, growing, or transitioning a business, or if you need to create or update your wills, trust, or estate plan, our team will give you an incredible level of personalized attention and a passionate commitment to meet your objectives. We are veteran-owned, and our award-winning lawyers have the highest ranking from Super Lawyers and Avo. We have also recently received the coveted Weatherhead 100 Upstarts Award for a second year in a row, and we are among the first Ohio business law firms to offer our clients a non-billable alternative on every single matter we handle for them, and opt out of the billable hour. What we are most proud of, though, are the many things our clients rely on us for. We successfully defend them in court, but we also help them avoid the courtroom with our Cover My Six service. We protect their assets through good estate and succession planning, and we assist our clients in many non-legal business services like recruiting and business development. We want our clients to feel confident in their choices and to help them resolve any issues or potential problems quickly and efficiently so they can get back to what they love, running their businesses. More than just litigators, we are trusted advisors, problem solvers, and growers of businesses. Let us help you and your company. Call us or find us online to learn more. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.